Well, it is Wednesday, June 26th, almost halfway, more than halfway through the year, or 6 months, and 6 months away from Christmas. Actually, 6 months shy, one day from Christmas. It is Wednesday, and this is Direct Line. Our special guest tonight is the chairman of the two-term limits petition drive in Montgomery County, also former county executive candidate Reardon, Sullivan. Welcome to the show. Our hosts tonight are Mark Unkefer and Jackie Saxton. Take it away, guys.
Thank you, Dwight and Sully. Thank you so much for joining us. So you're working on something that is, to me, like a no-brainer. But I guess that could be because we're living in a county with a ton of Democrats in charge that, like, we got to get rid of. But can you tell us a little bit about kind of what prompted you to go ahead and start this 2T initiative?
Actually, that's a great question. I actually get asked that a lot. And it comes from one of the meetings that we were having. We were just sitting around having some adult cocktails. And someone asked the question, how many terms can a county executive have? And just right after that, interestingly enough, we ran into Robin Ficker. And Robin Ficker, as you know, is the king of ballot initiatives. And after some conversations, it's like, the president has 2 terms, the governor has 2 terms, so shouldn't our county executive also have 2 terms? And that was the genesis of it. So I really thank Robin Ficker for his insight and said, we can do this. And if Robin can do it, I think we need to continue that path.
The first time I ever met Robin was him asking me to sign. It was the 9 districts for MoCo.
And it's interesting, that really is a callback, a reference to the fact that one of the most recent of the number of referendums where he's been successful has been the term limits for the county council, and that won overwhelmingly. So there appears to be a bedrock of a base of support in the county for the initiative.
Oh, and I think, again, when we got the signatures, we looked at the petitions to get an idea of how many of them were really going to be valid. And when we checked them against the Board of Elections database, it was really amazing to see how many were Democrats and independents. I mean, it's just, that makes sense in the county. But there's a lot of people who say, something, 2 terms is enough. It just makes sense. It's like Jackie said, it's pretty much a no-brainer. It's just a matter of we need to get the message out and not allow the county council to put up a competing bill, which will obfuscate the whole idea.
Yeah, term limits is unique in that it's one of the few political issues that really doesn't fall on a partisan line. So can you talk a little bit, for a lot of people who don't know, they just see it on the ballot and that's it, but there's a lot of work that goes into getting it there. So can you talk a little bit through what that process looks like?
Yeah, it is a lot of work. There's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that a lot of folks would not necessarily be aware of. In our case, because we are a legitimate entity in the state of Maryland. You have the same thing. You go to start a business, you have to get a tax number, a tax ID number. You have to file with the Maryland Board of Elections, and that's just the beginning. Then you have to have the domain, the website. Then once you get all the back of house stuff done, then you really have to reach out and motivate people who believe the same way that you do and who are willing to spend their Saturdays out in the cold, out in the heat, in the local giant food stores or at the various parking lots, talk to their friends and neighbors to get signatures. We also not only developed the petition form itself, but we went through and got what's known as an advanced determination, which is where we send it to the lawyer for the Board of Elections. And he says, yep, this meets the requirements of the state for ballot petitions. And we were able to get that done before we started collecting signatures. So there's a lot of work even before we see all the people out there with the 2 T-shirts and the banners.
So talk to me a little bit about the process of collecting signatures. I know in other states where they have, say, California initiatives, people go out and raise large amounts of money to get petition collectors to do it, but you've relied on more grassroots, on more volunteers in order to do that.
And that's exactly right. Like Jackie was saying, the whole idea of term limits is pretty much a no-brainer. When you mention it to people, they're like, yeah, we should do that. We should get it on the ballot. So we were lucky enough to reach out to enough Democrats, independents, and Republicans who say, yeah, we need to get term limits on the ballot. So we started out collecting signatures, and just due to various other, personal time constraints and issues, our rate of collecting signatures was not as much as I originally hoped. But we actually reached out to a separate professional company to collect ballot signatures the same way they did on 9D.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually the first tranche that was handed in, the 12,000, and that's how I know how many petition signatures that we're getting from our volunteers that are going to be handed in in about 2 weeks, and that's going to be 7,000 or 8,000. So I feel very comfortable that we're going to meet the threshold, unless, of course, the Board of Elections is overly picky about the signatures.
And how many signatures do you need? And when you're talking about pickiness, what is it that they're nitpicking to try and determine what's good and what's not?
We need to get it on the ballot. We need 12,000 valid signatures as determined by the Board of Elections. The problem becomes once they make their determination, we are not allowed to queue until after we get their piece of paper that says how many signatures they feel are valid. Then that gives us the gap that we need to fill. And as far as things that they're going to be picky on, if you actually read the statute, it's actually very, very specific. For example, if someone were to sign Jackie Saxton, that would not work because they take a look at the middle initial. And if you use like J.M. Saxton, that won't work either. The interesting thing is they have more databases available to them than we do. We have the Board of Elections database, but they also have access to the DMV database.
Mm-hmm.
And so that gives them more opportunities to validate the signatures over and above what we have. But at the same time, if they can't read the signature, they can't read the address. If the signature does not match what they have at the DMV, again, these are all their reasons to throw out the specific signature. And on a side note, you think, man, that's kind of picky. But whenever you were to go to vote, if you notice, you don't have to go through any of these machinations.
No.
And so there's a level of double standard or irony there that's hopefully doesn't escape people.
And the signatures have to be done in person, right? There's no virtual collection.
During the 9D ballot petition, they were able to do things virtually. Because of COVID, they had a special dispensation to be able to do that. Now, everything had to be wet signatures, which does two things. Number one, it makes collections a lot harder. And B, there's more room for error. And so I think the validity rate, from what I understand, is nationwide may be 70 to 80%. Again, we won't know until we know what it is. But even if the validity rate from the 12,000 that we submitted is 50%, that's 6,000. I feel comfortable. We have 7,000 coming in the back door, so we're still going to get over the 10.
Okay, that's good. You made a reference to the council's effort, and this is the Charter Review Commission. There was a great video. I don't know if we can listen to it, and then we can kind of talk about what all is going on here. But it's a great way to describe what they're up to.
So yeah, if you want, I can try to play one of the videos that we've done that
Sure.
basically explains how or what part of their game is going to be of putting up a competing measure on a ballot. So here we go. Bear with me for a second while I play this. So can you guys see the screen?
Not yet.
No, but yep.
Here we go. Here we go.
Okay, here we go.
As I mentioned earlier, just last week, the Commission voted to supplement the recommendations in our April report by addressing a fourth topic, and that is the issue of term limits for our county executive.
Awesome. I love that last sentence. If it's good enough for Clinton and Obama, it's good enough for our county.
So it probably bears some explaining that, because it would seem, well, gee, they're taking up the issue. Isn't that a good thing? But it's not a good thing. Could you kind of explain what is the Charter Revision Commission doing, and why is this how is this potentially going to undermine the initiative?
And that's a good question, because a lot of folks don't understand the way that works. So let's talk about that for a second. The way the law works, if you have two competing ballot initiatives and it can't be implemented independent from each other, then what happens is they nullify each other. They make it so that neither one of them actually passes. And that's, again, what they did with the 9D petition. They put up a competing ballot petition. And when doing so, both of them passed, which then means the status quo remained the same. And that's unfortunately the way the law reads. And actually, when you look at that video, there's a video that's talking about this. And Will Jawando, it's a matter, you can see the look on his face. It's like, hey, if we put one up and they both pass, they nullify, right? And that's most unfortunate. And I think that's terribly disingenuous of the people in the county council. I don't think that's in the spirit of good governance.
So,
and I think, go ahead, Jackie.
I was say, so what is the language of the opposing one that they're trying to put up? And is that one that they have to go through the same process that you're going through with collecting signatures?
That would be great if they did. Unfortunately, they don't. The way it's going to work is, my understanding, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but they have until July 1st, they being the county council, to submit to the county attorney the language for any ballot initiatives that they want. The county attorney is then going to rework that into something that would be on the ballot. They vote on it either the second or third Tuesday in July. And after that, it then becomes on the ballot. So, I mean, if people who are watching your show, it'd be great if they would reach out to the county council and maybe the county attorney and say, look, we see what you're doing. It's not really in the spirit of the law. You're really overstepping your power, basically, to maintain your dominance in the county, and for no good reason, something that's not going to benefit the people who live in the county. And that's basically problematic.
Now, you referenced the fact that part of the backstory to this is in the video, and I think you referenced it earlier, which is that they only got interested in taking up this issue after they found out that the petition was going to be submitted, and that creates some legal difficulty. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Yes, and thanks for pointing that out. When we submitted the ballot petition, we submitted on June 13th. according to section, I think it's 509 of the county charter, the Charter Review Commission was supposed to submit their recommendations to the county council by May 1. They failed to do that, or they submitted 3 recommendations. And then just magically, the fact that on June 13th, when we submitted, they said, oh, we want to consider this 4th one. And they're going to use that, and you can see it coming. They're going to use the Charter Review Commission. Hey, we had input from the voters about these things that we're suggesting to the county council. However, they didn't get any input from the voters on this issue because it was done after the original submission and obviously in a hurry.
So what recourse, if any, do we have on that, or do you guys have on that?
Well, I think the only thing, there's a couple possible tactics. One of which is to, again, contact the county council and say, look, we see the game. We've seen this movie before. Let's not, it's disingenuous. Don't do it. If you do it, you'll pay for it at the voting box. Number 2, it'll probably be just like it was on 9D, where they are going to put their measure first, because if you have the first measure, oftentimes passes, not the second one. They're going to put their measure first, and then we just have to do a severe marketing campaign to educate the voters as to what the differences are and what the genesis was. And I'll step outside this issue. They are also going to put on a measure or a ballot initiative to get rid of what was known as the Ficker Amendment, to make it so that they can more easily raise taxes instead of having to have a unanimous vote to raise property taxes. It's now going to be just a super majority.
Oh, great, because my property tax isn't high enough. I'm not looking forward to getting that bill on the 8th.
They don't think so. They want to keep your property taxes going up on the rise. And again, the citizens, the people who, I'll say live, die, pay taxes, raise their kids here in Montgomery County, they're too busy taking care of their business. They want to make sure that they have a job. They want to make sure that their kids are trying to get a good education, which is yet another topic. And they don't see all these things. They don't see the game until it's too late. And unfortunately, the people who are in the inside baseball crowd, I think we need to do a better job at getting a clear, simple, common sense message out to the voters such that they can better understand what's going on, understand not like the main story. But again, as well as I do, because y'all have been in it much longer than me, that's a tall order. It's a tall order to get a message out to people.
So go ahead.
As I say, I know one of the ways that they try to get certain measures passed or others not passed is deceptive wording. Is there really a way to deceptively word, no term limits or term limits that they can try and?
Yeah, I would fully suspect their ballot petition that they're talking about is, we want term limits, but we want it at 3 terms. And they're going to, that's what lawyers do to some extent, is they can reframe topics. And the good lawyers, and the lawyer for the county he's a good lawyer. He can reframe it and make it so that it sounds as good or better than our ballot petition. Our ballot petition is really simply about, you change 3 words in the county charter and you get 2 terms for the county executive. 3 words equals 2 terms. And whenever we have to see what the verbiage actually ends up being, which we won't know till the middle of July. And at that point, then we can see the game will become patently obvious.
So their strategy is really to confuse what would otherwise be a fairly simple step by adding all sorts of additional complexity to it. Did you have an additional video to show on this?
Yeah, there's a couple of videos. Like one of the buzzwords that we had was, again, 3 words for equals 2 terms. So I'll go ahead and
Great.
bear with us for a second. I'll try to play that one. So can you see my screen?
It's loading up. It's teeing up. There it is.
It's going now.
Okay.
But after unanimously deciding to oppose the petition that's being circulated, the commission went on to consider whether the charter's current provision on term limits should be reconsidered and refined. That's because of the way our 3-term limit works. It does not actually prevent somebody from serving more than 3 terms. It actually doesn't prevent somebody from serving technically an unlimited number of terms if they take enough breaks in service.
So am I right in understanding that what they're thinking about suggesting is that maybe Mark Elric, who is like, I think 70 something, would take 4 years off and then come back and run again?
They're saying that that's an option and can actually come back as many times as he wants to. And, again, people who are in politics are really good at obfuscating things.
Right.
And that's what we see here. The common everyday person who, lives here in the county and wants to be successful in the county.
Right.
They're like, no, this just doesn't make common sense. But I think in some cases, common sense is uncommon. And that's where we need to, again, reach out to the voters, the people in the county, with a clear, simple, common sense message as to really what's going on in the county and what they can do to change the trajectory of where we're going.
So what kind of marketing do you think would you like to see get done? Obviously, I saw that at the end of those videos, you have a donate link. So what can that money go towards? Are we thinking mailers or local TV ads? What kind of marketing can be done to inform the voters?
I think since we have a relatively short window, I mean, that it's going to be, once they do the ballot, the other ballot question, we're going to know that by the middle of July. The mail-in ballots have to be sent out, I believe, by September 21st. So that's not a terribly big window to reach people. So trying to do a mailer, not so much. I think in real life, the social media is really the big ticket here, because I think we need, it has to be fast. It has to reach into multiple homes, and along that line, I think we need to do it in multiple languages. So we're going to be doing it in Spanish, for example, and quite possibly Farsi. And,
in the past, do most voters participate in the referendum, or is it a drop-off? Obviously, this would take place in a presidential year, which we've seen successful referendums in the past. But what's the percentage of people who participate in these referendums?
I don't know, but the number of people, as far as like who votes for the top of the ticket, but not necessarily the down ballot issues. I don't know that number. I know that typically the ballot initiatives pass with 60 to 70% of the vote.
Right.
And so there's a strong possibility and probability that if it was just a single ballot initiative, it would pass.
Right.
If both ballot initiatives are on the ballot and they both get over 50%, well, then that's the nullifying effect that they're looking for. So that's you know that's a tough pill to swallow. And again, since we were just having this ballot initiative again for the county executive, just like the president, we really weren't expecting the county council to consider putting up a competing amendment, but they are. So
Have you heard from any Democrat? You mentioned that rank and file Democrats and independents have been signing the petition efforts. Have you heard from any privately from Democrats who support this?
Oh yes, I mean, both myself and Vicky and a whole bunch of other folks have been out not only canvassing for candidates but also for the ballot petition. And the people who sign it, when the question is asked, I'd say it's 80 to 90% of the people who are sign it. And when you look them up, they're Democrats. So it's
Right.
it's been very, very well received throughout all political parties. I think Jackie even said, and I think correctly, that it's a non-partisan issue.
Well, and I think the argument could even be made if you're talking to Democrats, even like on the Democratic Central Committee in Montgomery County. Like it's not like this is increasing the chance of Republicans taking that seat, because it's not doing anything to change the voter, makeup or anything like that. This is just simply term limits.
And the pushback that we get of the 10% of the people who are not, who more so snub the whole idea. It's like that voting is effectively term limits. That's the pushback. And so which I think does have merit, but just like I refer to George Washington when he turned in his commission, actually interesting enough in Maryland, he understood that at some point the leadership has to change. You can't be a leader for life, because then you're a president. And so the other question is, well, why not just one term? Well, in one term, you really don't have your feet wet yet. You're just really learning the game. And by the end of 2 terms, if you can't get your job done by the end of 2 terms, you're heading towards being a dictator. And to give you an example, also the power of incumbency. When you look at the Democratic primary last cycle, for 2 elections, David Blair spent over $10 million of his own money. Mark Elridge had, I think, $1.6 million, of which $750,000 was public election funding. But he also had $12 million, estimated $12 million, of free social media and public outreach because of being an incumbent. So if you don't get rid of the incumbents, they basically develop their own dynasty, and there are no new ideas can come to the surface. You ask people, what was your internet provider 8 years ago? What was 12 years ago, people were on AOLs and AOL. They're like, oh, yeah. Where were your kids 12 years ago? What grade were they in? Things change at some point. What we do here in the county and how we respond to changing needs, that has to change. It has to, at some point, come in touch with the needs of our ever-growing county.
Cool.
Sounds good. It sounds like we'll have an interesting election coming up. Do they have provisions like this in other counties in Maryland? I think there are a number that have term limits as well. For county executives? There
are for the highest office. Yes, some of them don't always have county executives. There's other governing functions. I think there's 2 that have no term limits, but the majority of them do have some level of term limits. And again, it goes back to that initial conversation we had after a few cocktails. The president has 2 terms. The governor has 2 terms. Shouldn't the county executive also have 2 terms? It's to me, it's like I agree with Jackie. It's pretty much a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Jackie, you and I will probably, this is a shameless plug that we have to build into this. We'll have to find out what the rules are in Baltimore County, whether the county executive can do it. And I think we could probably do that by going to Masoni's, right?
Let's talk about it over Italian food.
Talk it over. It's happy for. I'm sorry, Sully. That I know that came out of left field, but we do that.
It's so much more fun to watch you try to work it in there.
Yes, well, here's the thing. I don't want Dwight yelling at me after the show is over that we forgot to mention Masoni's. So we're going to build in the fact that it's a great place to go. Sully, it sounds like great. You've talked about the fact that you're doing petition signatures. You've got a website. We should plug that. And are there additional events where people can find you or find your signature, the people collecting signatures between now and the end? Well, not the end of this month, but the end of July when you have to submit it.
Well, what we're going to do is, because from a practical production standpoint, we have to gather all the signatures. We've been scanning them. We wrap them up in discrete bundles of 250 when we give them to the Board of Elections. And so what we're actually doing an all call to actually get all of our many petition gatherers or circulators to give us the petitions by July 8th, because it's going to take that some time to get the back end work taken care of. And so we're only going to be out at a few different giants. And I think that's going to be on the website. And there's also going to be at various 4th of July. The other thing, what's really interesting is when people hear about this, there's so many people who just call me up and say, hey, can I get some blank petition forms? I can't tell you how many times I've gone out to people I did not know in places I had never been, to give them blank petition forms, to give them the binder clips, the stickers that say, hey, I'm a petition signer. There's just a lot. I mean, I was dropping them off 2 and 3 times a week to any number of different people. So that's why I say I don't know the exact number that we're going to get. And where we had some people at the parking lot of like Whole Foods. We had people in the parking lot of the White Supermarket, Germantown. They're all over. So we're going to be getting a lot more signatures. Where these people are going to be, I just say, I'm not micromanaging somebody and say, just go get me some signatures. And
Sounds good. Yeah. So can we get to just share us what the website link is?
So I'll pull it up here real quick.
Perfect.
And I'll go ahead and share that. So is it coming up?
Yep, there it is.
There we go.
So then,
So what's the URL there?
URL, the Committee for Better MoCo Government. I know that's terribly long. In retrospect, lessons learned. Anytime you do something like this, you learn sometimes what to do and what not to do.
Yeah.
And who was it? Picasso who said, I'm always doing things I don't know how to do so I can learn how to do them.
That's a great idea.
And so this tells you, again, a little bit about the committee and calling all petitions, because we need to make it so that we get them in by July 9th. And so that's basically where we're at.
Well, thank you very much. We really appreciated hearing more about this petition effort. And it sounds like this is something we'll all be talking about between now and November. Jackie?
Absolutely. And if there's anyone out there who's watching this who wants to get involved and can't remember the long URL, get in touch with me or with Mark or with Sully, and we'll make sure that you get connected.
Yes. Hey, thank you guys for having me and being willing to, work to make this a reality. And
Thanks.
also,